Well, you would have seen the stories developing around the people who've been arrested for the murder of the Uber driver Isaac Suttner on Friday. At the same time, the Transport Department is bringing in new regulations that will require Uber and Bolt cars to be properly branded and have panic buttons for passengers. The aim is to make customers safer. Justin Suttner is the General Manager for Aura Sub-Saharan Africa. They're an association that helps to coordinate emergency responses. Justin, good afternoon to you. I mean, we've seen so much happening in the e-hailing space. We actually saw the footage of Suttner's murder, as awful as it was. How important are things like cameras or panic buttons in a car for the safety of people in an e-hailing taxi?
Yeah, good afternoon, Stephen. Thanks for having me on. The footage and the images coming out of what we saw last week is horrific. So our condolences go out to the family and as well. In terms of security and panic buttons and cameras, we actually believe it's probably one of the best approaches that can be taken for the e-hailing industry as a whole, specifically around layering in different security measures to ensure that you take preventative or proactive measures as well as reactive measures if incidents like these occur in the future.
I suppose the idea is that a passenger would have a panic button in the car. I presume it would be hardwired in. You could push it. It might have a cover or some case. You would push it and someone then would come to help you. It's not clear to me who would come to help you.
So the regulation actually states that the panic button needs to be linked to a private security company. And so who would actually come to assist you is a private security company. So from Aura's side, we're already heavily involved in the e-hailing industry, specifically with Uber. And what we've done is essentially aggregated emergency response services, but the private emergency armed response companies. So in that case, someone activates, whether it's the driver or the rider, they would activate a panic button and the nearest vetted private security armed responder would respond to that location.
Okay, so so the panic button would also then indicate where the car is. Would the car be tracked in sort of real time anyway, so the private security company would know where to go?
Yes. So there's a myriad of ways in which to do this. What we do is we've technically enabled thousands of security companies and vehicles within the country. So that panic activation would come through to our control center, and that would be the location of that driver or the passenger would be constantly updated, and that information fed through to the security response officer responding to the incident taking place. So everything is in live, real time.
And Justin, how would you deal with abuse? I mean, I can just imagine. I mean, it's a Friday night, it's a Saturday night. Do I need to fill in the gaps here? Someone gets in the car. They have an argument with the driver about politics or the music choice or something, and they press the button. I mean, how do you manage that?
Yeah, so it's actually, we've been doing it for about 7-8 years already. So we've developed quite a lot of IP in the space. There's a lot of varying ways in which you can do this, and a lot of the e-hailing companies are also coming to the party to assist, specifically Uber, whether it's verification, whether it's monitoring audios, adding dash cameras to the vehicles to ensure that you not only are just responding to a blind incident, but also have an understanding as to what's going on. Our premise, at least at Aura, is around getting to that scene and de-escalating the situation as much as possible, if needs be to escalate it to where, both parties are separated and the situation's under control. But it's really about making sure that whether it's the driver or the rider of that e-hailing service at least has the ability to call for help and to know that someone is en route to ensure that they're safe.
Justin, I've been thinking a bit about the requirement in the new regulations that an e-hailing car be branded. And I get the idea that you would know that this is an Uber car or a Bolt car. And some of them are branded already anyway. I have to say, though, when I use one of these services, I wait for the car to come. And because I don't know that it's actually an e-hailing car. I mean, I know what kind of models they tend to be, but I always check the number plate on my app, and my concern is that you could have a person standing outside a party or a nightclub or something, waiting for an Uber or a Bolt, a car that is branded Uber or Bolt arrives, and because they can see the branding, they don't check the number plate. Then they might be much easier for someone to abduct them. So I get that. I think on balance it might be safer, but don't the consequences go both ways? I'm not always sure that branding it is such a good idea.
Stephen, I agree with you. It's definitely a double-edged sword. On the one end, you're ideally trying to make it safer for the passengers or the riders to ensure they can identify that it is a Bolt or an Uber or an InDrive or whatever the case may be. But on the other end, it also creates, as you mentioned now, can create a bit of a precarious scenario. On top of that, there's also been a lot of discussion around branding creates more targets, criminals targeting e-hailing drivers, whether it's for abductions or other criminal activity. They are now sitting targets in terms of being able to identify these e-hailing drivers. So I do think it goes both ways. I actually still am quite for the branding of the vehicles, and it's really now up to a lot of the e-hailing providers, the Bolts and the Ubers, to ensure that there's additional layers of verification. So whether that is making sure that there's a video verification of the driver getting in, that it's the right driver, or that it can extend to the rider as well, around, is this the rider that said that they requested the trip? And there's obviously a multitude of complexity that comes with that, but I think as a start, that is where the industry needs to go and needs to get there pretty quickly.
The regulations that we're bringing in now, I mean, they're due to come into force in kind of 6 weeks' time. I don't know if they will, because there might well have to be some sort of change. How do they compare to what happens in other countries? I mean, are they very similar to what other people do?
So, look, I can't comment too much on whether the regulations will come into effect, because that's something that the e-hailing drivers and the department must work out. In terms of other countries, look, South Africa, as you know, and I suppose the listeners as well, is that in terms of South Africa, it's a pretty unique country, unfortunately plagued with a lot of violent crime. In our experience at Aura, we look after Uber in a multitude of other countries, specifically around Kenya, where crime is not as prevalent, specifically around the violent crime that we saw over the weekend. So there is still concern from e-hailing companies, both on the driver and rider side, but it tends to be a little less. Tends to be a little less problematic around the violent crime. Having said that, our services also extend to medical, so we see a lot of medical activations, medical responses being required across varying different markets. And from a security side, it tends to stem to a lot more driver altercations, riders not paying, and also getting into the wrong Ubers or Bolts and whatnot. So there is definitely a need for security and safety in other markets, as unfortunately our data is dictating that safety and security events are on the rise in certain other countries, specifically in and around Kenya, Uganda, and a few other African markets.
The technology is very helpful, but obviously there also needs to be verification of drivers and customers. And this is really hard to do in any market because you're dealing with so many people. The fact is, when you get into an Uber or a Bolt, you don't know who you're getting into the car with, and the driver doesn't know who's getting into their car. I can't see any kind of way around that, I'm afraid, Justin.
Yeah, Stephen, it has been a bit of a bugbear within the e-hailing industry for quite some time. The unknowns. I mean, if we saw what happened last week, with that Bolt incident, they had no idea who was coming in. So the truth of the matter is that the e-hailing companies are going to have to start getting more stringent and implementing a lot more technological aids to help drivers and riders understand who they're getting into the car with or who's getting in the car with them. So there's been a lot of talk recently post this incident over the weekend around, rekeyed SIM cards, video verification, photo identification, PIN numbers being sent to drivers and riders. Do I believe those are going to work? Yes. Do I believe it will eliminate absolutely everything?
Justin?
No, unfortunately. Yes.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Justin Suttner, General Manager for Aura Sub-Saharan Africa.